Hey everybody, and welcome back to Stand Up Your Tubes, where we control the tubes and the tubes never control us. So I wanted to take a minute to introduce you to Ben and Velma, the latest free tutorial on the channel. Okay, for me, it's all about the children. And look at her. Look at her. I mean, what child isn't going to want to just grab up one of these dolls and love on them? So I hope you'll like, subscribe, watch the tutorial all the way to the end, where I will put a link for these adorable little chukka boots with the fur-lined top. I'll give you a couple options and a couple alternatives. All right, God bless you. Let's get our head ready. So I have a little head cap that I cranked out just so you can see what it looks like when it comes off the 46 or 48 pin. This is 22 rows, and I cast on and off with my fur yarn. No 4-ply tied on, because I want it to have a nice furry edge around the front of the face and to close up really tight at the back. So this was just a sample so you can see how it doesn't even look like it could make a hair. But this is what it looks like when we cinch up one end, close it up, tie a knot, and bring our fur tail to the inside and snip it off. Then we'll take the other one and we'll just cinch it up, snug it up a little bit until we get it, just about this big. And then when we have our head ready, we'll put that down over the top of our head, and that'll be the hair, a short hair. And if we want to have long hair and have pigtails or a ponytail in the back, this is a 3x5 cardstock. I wrapped it 10 times. I have a piece of yarn up at the top to tie it together with. And then once it's on my face, I can insert it under the edge, tie a bow right here, and make it look like a pigtail hanging down or a big ponytail in the back. That's how we have options for long or short hair. So this is the face. It's 60 rows on your 46, 48, folded in half. Then I'm going to put a draw cord on the top by going under row over row all the way across, so we can close that up. That'll be the top of the head. The cast on, cast off will be the neck. This is the neck. It's on your 22 pin. It's 30 rows. We're going to fold it in half. So this is folded. I have a draw cord on my folded edge so we can close that up. But on the bottom, I simply whip stitched it together just so that it is open. I snugged it up around 3 or 4 fingers to keep its shape. And the reason that we whip stitched it together is because when we insert this down in the sweater, we're going to stuff down into the neck, down into our shoulders. We're going to make sure that's nice and stiff, and then we'll sew our head on to our neck base. That'll be the order that we do it. So for the eyes, I have 4 rows in between the outside edges of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. I started by counting. I usually don't, but the actual stitch that wrapped around my cast on or cast off cord, and counted up 16 and then popped them into the hole. My eyes are in. I'm going to go ahead and cinch up the bottom. This would be the neck. Shorten these yarn tails down and just tie this up. You don't have to stress about getting that completely closed because it's going to sit on top of our neck. And now let's talk about adorning our eyes just a little bit. I have some black yarn, and it isn't super heavy. Even though it's a 4-ply, it's a little thinner feeling. So this is a really quick way to pop the eye out. Just bring your needle up right at the top center of the eye. Leave a yarn tail back here to tie off to. Then come down right onto the bottom of the center of the eye. Come up just a little bit past your eye so you can make like the little point there. Okay, and then you have a loop right here. Make sure that you have enough here between your needle and your yarn tail that doesn't get tangled up in it. So put your thumb under this loop, kind of snug it up just a little bit over your thumb, and then bring your needle under it, and that pulls your eye out. So that's a little bit big, but here's my prototype, just a little like this, and then I just did 2 little eyelashes. That is optional, but it just pops that eye out a little bit. So I think I would undo my yarn and come back 1 stitch closer to the eye, and then go over and do the same thing to the other eye. So I'm going to do that off camera and be right back. Shorten it up just a tiny bit, trapped my yarn, and just bring my needle down on the other side of the yarn, bring it to the inside. Decide whether or not you want to have little eyelashes coming up. I don't think I will this time. So I'm going to take my yarn tail on the inside and snug it together. Take a look at the outside, make sure I'm not snugging it up too tight, and tie a knot, and do the same thing on your other eye. Now just release this and repeat on this one. Okay, now that we have our head made, let's work on our legs. So our legs, the body color is 60 rows on your 22 pin. This one is also 60, but I folded it in half, pulled it together at the ends, tied it like you're preparing the top of a beanie, and then we can just turn it inside out to bury those yarn tails. We'll do the same thing on this one. This is our leg tube that is our pant leg. And the way we're going to do that one is we're going to take our pant color, which for me is the pale blue, and we're going to do 25 rows. Then our cuff, which I made a darker blue, is 15 rows, so we have a total of 40 at this point. Then we go back to our pant color and do 25 rows, and we just end up with 65 rows. We need 2 of each of the tubes. Once we have our bottoms tied off and we flipped it so our yarn tails go to the inside, we need to have a way to draw it closed at the top. This one I've already done and stuffed, and this is our leg. This one just needs the stuffing put in it, and we'll just stuff it out off camera. But this, doing it this way is what is going to allow us to have a doll that looks like it's wearing its clothes instead of just having a color and then a color change and then a color change. So get them looking about the same, and once they're stuffed out and they feel pretty good, we can tie a bow at the top, or if we feel confident that we like how stuffed they are, we can just go ahead and cinch it up. And this is my second one, so I think I like this. And this is the top of our leg tube. It doesn't have to be cinched together so that there is absolutely no opening. And that's how we'll prepare these. Now here's where we get the look of having a pant leg. This is the bottom of our leg, and we're going to slip that into a little boot, a high top tennis shoe, a pair of slippers, but something that comes up around the ankle. And here we have it. So a portion of this is going to be down in our shoe. We have this turned so that we have our rows lined up, our blue, because nothing looks worse than having it not turned and then seeing like a bright orange down in this blue because we didn't line up our edges. So what's key to make this work so that our doll can sit is that our leg tube is down from the top of this tube, at least this far. And that lets us close up this tube, and then we can rotate our leg when we put it into the body. So we need that. So I'm going to fold this one in half, get it on top of this leg. So we're starting with our pants color, and I actually started this way. Because I'm left-handed, I just go left to right. And that's how we read, so let's flip it this way. So with our pants color on our larger Addi Sentro 4648, we're going to do 25 rows of our pant color. Then we're going to do 15 rows of our cuff color. That's going to bring it up to 40 rows. Then we're going to have a beautiful sweater color. This is a Hobby Lobby's yarn, and it just happened to put these stripes in here. I'll tell you what kind of yarn it is in the description. But I did 50 rows of the sweater color, and now that brings us up to 90 rows. Then tie the pant color back on there, do 25 rows, and we now have 115 rows, and we cast off. Let's fold our body tube in half with the big bold stripe on the outside, and that is going to be the cuff of our sweater. So I have a couple pins, and we want to bring our stripe together in a couple places. I'm going to grab a couple more pins and maybe put about 3 of them going across here just to hold our cuff on, because that's what makes it look like the sweater is coming over our pants instead of just a color change. I have a few bobby pins in here to hold my colors together. So before we go much further, let's secure our cuff, and we don't want it to be obvious, so let's come up from underneath with our yarn. I'm going to go right on the edge, and when I come back down, I'm only going over one single, let me see if I can bring this up, one single bar, one little loop, so it doesn't become obvious. And then I'm going to skip a couple rows. You don't have to come up anywhere in particular. And then just go over one single piece of yarn loop, like the left-hand side of your V. So work all the way around like that. And the reason we're doing that is so it isn't obvious that we're securing it together. When we get all the way around, we'll reach underneath and tie it off to this yarn tail. All right, I'll be back when I'm all the way around. We're going to stuff this body tube, so once you make it all the way around, just give it a little stretch before tying underneath your flap here. I started using my sweater color, but it wasn't cooperating because it was variegated. And so even though I was sewing right up here on the sweater row, it was popping out bright colors. So I suggest you use the color of your band. And then that was really, really easy to control. So I'm going to bury these yarn tails. Now we need to prepare the bottom of our tube. And see how it's big because it was the cast on, cast off. So let's snug it up. Let's just really put our hand in here, and all we're trying to do is make it come straight down. So we're taking some of the play out of, see how we're just pulling it, and now it is more straight up and down. Okay, so we are going to be inserting our legs into the center of this tube. That's why we didn't want to have any stuffing right here, because once we insert it, that's going to allow our leg to bend up and down. So we have to secure these together. So when you feel comfortable that you've squared it up and not over cinched it, and then you might want to readjust your gathers a little bit, you can tie these 2 yarn tails together. If you have one long enough to sew with, you can start sewing with it right now. because we are going to just whip stitch the edge all the way around until we get back to the start. And this will be hidden, but we still want to go under the double loop and then come over to the other side and catch the double loop so we get a good stitch. You don't even have to get every single one. Don't skip too many, but if you were to get off and skip one, it's not going to matter. Just keep coming around, going through the double loops like this until you get all the way around. When I get all the way around, I'll come back on. If you find that your yarn tail you were sewing with is a little bit short, no problem. Just put your needle on the other one and work your way back towards it. And then tie them off together when we have this totally whip stitched closed. We're going to do the same thing to the top of our leg tubes. Just make sure that they're coming up evenly and not splayed out. So we're just going to put for me, it's like 4 fingers still kind of spread apart. Snug the tubes up around them. I'm going to tie the 2 yarn tails together, but this time when we close them, we're going through all 4 layers. So the inside one won't slip down. And see, our white tube is still down where it needs to be. Most of this is going to be down in our shoe. So close them up on, and then join me back and we'll insert them and we'll be moving right along. Okay, so I wanted to say that I only did 4 stitches across the top here because you don't have to hit every row. So I have a knot here. This is knotted off. I could just let my yarn tails go up inside. So it's your choice. Do you want to bury them or just put them up in the tube? But they go up in like this, and it's the way we sew them on that gives us a really nice seam. This is where we get a beautiful seam. So our rows will pretty much line up because this is twice as wide as these are. So we're going to just have it nice and squared up, insert our legs, and then come to the up here onto our tube, and here's where we whip stitched together, so we want to get back. So I'm going to come into this row. I'm going to pick a row where my V's are pointed down, and it's consistency, so it doesn't matter if they're pointing up or down, but just so that when you are up here and down here, how they're pointing. So here's the top of my leg, and I'm going to stay back off where I whipped stitch this together and come down here. Let's see if that lines up before I commit to that stitch. Okay, so and then I'm going to come down into this one, leave a yarn tail, come up onto my sweater and find the next one that's pointed down, staying back off of where I whip stitched together, and coming down into my leg and finding the next one that's pointed down. So I'm going to go all the way around onto the other side and then pull that cord so you can see how it lines those rows up. So here is what's going to happen. I went all the way across the front and onto the back, just going right around. We're not committed to how this is, where the sides are or anything right now. We're just sewing the legs in. So now when I start pulling this mattress stitch, it lines these rows. Look how beautiful that is. It just lines them up. And plus, this is a crease, but it's still nice to see them come together like this. And now I'm just going to keep on going across the back in the same manner. Then insert this leg and just keep going around until I get back where I started, and then I'll join you back. They sewed on perfectly. So if you start like right in here and just keep lining your rows up, go all the way around. When you get into here, then you'll know how to finish up the V right here, like that you get in and get that inside stitch and bring it up and catch that inside stitch. So I tied mine off right here and buried the yarn tails. It turned out great. Let's give our doll a butt so that it reliably will sit up. So what I've done is I've made 2 tubes that are 30 rows long, slid one tube up inside the other, and then cinched both ends up because now we have basically a beanie pool on both sides. So it is a double tube. Cinched this side up first, buried the yarn threads, then lightly stuffed it so it's like this. Like this. Counted in 15 because it's 30 rows and found the center. And when I had the right amount of stuffing in it, I snugged up the other end, buried my yarn so that I have one nice long sewing yarn. And the pin is to line it up right between the legs. We're going to bring it up close to where the sweater is right here. So if you take the doll and set it down on the table, you want it to just be like right under the sweater. It just makes it sit better. So let's line this up. It's going to be a couple rows above where you put your legs on. So I'm going to start sewing around, go all the way around, and it's not going to be a perfect match, so I'm going to just go into my body. I'll be mattress stitching along the same row, but going into my body where it touches. So with that in mind, this from the leg to where I'm going to sew is not quite 2 fingers. So I'm going to thread this up and start sewing around. When I get to where I've cinched it up, I'm going to be sewing 1 stitch off of where we cinched it. So I'm going to get started sewing. That's what your little butt will look like. Not real noticeable. The sweater comes down and kind of kisses the top of it, but it gives us something to sit on. And they're sitting on it right now. Okay. Okay, I have the draw cord in on the top of my sweater, and so we can start stuffing. All right, Velma. This is Velma. That's her name. And she's able to sit. So the little butt worked. So I'm going to close up slightly because the neck goes in this opening with a bow, because believe me, we do not want a knot up here. So just tie a bow. And now let's put our neck tube in. Miss Velma is sitting pretty. I think I have her shoulders stuffed out pretty nice. And remember when we made our neck tube and it was 30 rows where we're going to insert it? And it's open at the bottom so we can keep stuffing. And so I have exposed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 rows. So let's turn it around and actually start sewing back here where we have the neck tube cinched up with the bow, so it doesn't interfere with what we're doing as we work our way around. So the draw cord that we put in the top here is going to work to our advantage. So I'm going to go into the row on my neck, and I'm going to go through both layers to make it sturdier. So I'm feel that pin on the inside. Leave a yarn tail, and there's 22 rows going around because it's our 22 pin, and there are 22 loops because we went over under, so we're seeing every other one popped up, so that brings that down to almost a perfect match to our neck tube. So we can go under a row on our neck, and my V's are going down, so I'll just be able to keep track of which ones I'm going into. I'm going to pick the next one up, and then go into the next one that's wrapped around that cord that drew it up. Just makes it so much easier going through both layers of my neck just to get it a really good snug seam going around there. So I'm going to join you back when I've gone all the way around, and we'll tie off the cord to the top of our body and cinch off the cord that we're sewing with. I made it all the way around, so now I'm going to put my fingers in here and I'm going to snug up the sweater, just giving it a little bit of a tug on that neck and knotting it. I'll bury the threads in a minute. Now, when we pull the threads, the thread that goes all the way around, we want to pull from both sides and really make sure that it's snugging up all the way around. Because when I did my prototype, it didn't. When I got around to the front and I was sewing my head on, I noticed that I had some loose stitches right here. So examine them all the way around. Okay. That's what prototypes are for. So we catch that kind of stuff. Okay, looks good. I'm going to tie this off too. Get a nice knot on it and really have it snug. Okay, one more little tug. There we go. Okay. Now we can really put some stuffing down in there. I'm going to stuff it, stuff it, stuff it. Try to find here's my yarn tails. They got pulled down inside. So I'm going to bring the stuffing down into the body, whatever it takes to really snug up that neck tube. I have really sturdied this up with stuffing a lot. Right down, just really pushing it down in through the top of the tube, into the shoulder area. It feels sturdy. If it's not sturdy, it's not going to stand up. So it's important. Really stuffed the tube right up to the top, and now we can start drawing it together. This is our neck base to sew onto. And we are sewing down here. So when we flatten this out, and that's what we want to do, we're sewing right along this outside edge. I'm going to pop this hair off. And this is the top where we have a bow, the beanie cinch, tube cinch down here where we tied it and everything is the bottom. So we're going to line that up over the top of the hole on this one. We're going to smush it down, and we're going to be sewing down here and in here. So we're sewing here and down here, smushing this down. If you want to, just try to flatten it out a little bit. So I'm going to thread up a needle, remembering that the one where we have a bow is the top of the head. Get the eyes lined up. So sit it down, have it looking towards you, and start sewing it on. And you'll have to go under 2 rows on the neck to 1 row, 1 row on the neck to 2 rows on the head, because this is the big machine, this is our small machine. So I'm going to thread up my needle. Sewing on the head can be a little tricky, keeping it lined up when the ball's wanting to roll. So I actually thought it'd be a great idea if we gave ourselves a guideline to follow. So I have a light pink color. It'll disappear, or we can just pull it out. So I'm just going to come back a few stitches, counting from there, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and just visually put a guideline going across. So I know that I'm not rolling my head way off course. Kind of like this, just loosely. Now I'm going to have a little bit of a visual so that I know that I'm not rolling it off one way or the other. So do you see that pink thread through there? That's going to just help me along the way. And it's about, well, maybe 3/4 of an inch from the very center. It's probably a full inch over. So now I can line up on top of my head, and when I'm sewing it on, I'm going to see that pink thread there to keep me going straight. So I'm going to have my eyes looking up. I'm going to thread up my needle with my cream colored yarn and start sewing it to the neck, keeping that pink as my guide. And so I've inserted my thread. I've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up so that I'm having myself a nice flat base here. Laying the doll down so that I can see that my eyes are going to be facing forward. I can see the pink in there, so I'm going to come up here, and it's going to be 2 rows on the head to 1 row. I've got my head in the way. I apologize, to 1 row on my neck, because this is a tube is twice as big as our little 22 pin. So grabbing 2 rows and then going through both layers, going deep into the neck, coming back up and looking for 2 rows right where my pink is, keeping my, sorry about my head, I apologize, where my pink is, that's where I'm going to be staying. Then count every now and then to make sure you're going straight around. Look for your pink, and you might have to pull your rows out because they're cinched in. This is going to make it so much easier to keep track of where you're sewing. And that way you won't be rolling it off to one side or the other. So I'm going to go all the way around, keeping in mind that I want to stay 5 up, and then I'm watching the pink, that it's 2 to 1. And you're going to have to reach in and pull it out. Boy, that guide, little pink guide thread was such a blessing. So I just am right where I started. So I just snipped the end off, tucked it in. It's not going to show. And just going to take my last couple stitches, snug it up. When I get all the way around, I'll tie off to the one that I started with, make sure I snug it up good, and then I'm going to go around a second time for some more stability, and that'll finish sewing on the head. Okay, I almost think I don't need to go around a second time, but I'm coming in, and now I'm just pushing the stuffing down towards the bottom where we sewed to get a nice shape down there. That's why I like to use bows. And I have a big old hole in her head right now, so I'm going to fill that up. Start snugging a little bit to see what the shape is going to be like. I may or may not just take these yarn tails and go around a second time. And when we put the scarf on, that's also going to do a lot to sturdy. And there it is, sitting up. Kind of looks like E.T. or an alien. She needs some hair. We need sleeves. So this is our finished sleeve. I mean, I folded it into place. I don't quite have it finished, but this is what our sleeve is going to look like. We're going to have a hand, a cuff, and our sweater. So we're going to start with our body color. 15 rows, cuff color, which is the cuff that we put right here on the bottom of our pant leg. Also 15 rows, which brings us up to 30 rows. Then I tied on the sweater color, and this is just happening in the yarn naturally till I come down to here. That was 40 rows. So when I'm right here, we have a total of 70 rows. Put the body color on, do your last 15 rows, and you will now be at 85 rows, and your tube will be done. Then stretch it out. Make sure everything is double knotted where you've changed colors. I'm going to pull the part where the band is inside my sweater tube just for a moment. Snug up the end of this tube. Bring the other one down over it and snug it up. Then we want to secure them together. The yarn tails are way too long, so I'm going to snip them off. Snug and snug. Double knot. Maybe a triple. I'm going to flip it over, and that puts the yarn tails to the inside. Now, where we tied together, I see a blue one right here, so I'm going to take my needle and make that blue yarn. I'm going to fish it back down this way because I think I'm going to see that in my paw. So I'm going to pause just a moment and work that back. We're going to treat this just like we did our sweater. So this is our cuff, and it's because we did this that it looks like our doll is wearing clothes rather than just a basic color change. So we're going to go up and bring our blue together and use the same color as your cuff, and we're just going to secure it just like we did on the sweater. Just go over one little loop, skip a couple rows, a little loop, just tacking it as you go around, and we'll tie it underneath. So I'm going to do both of mine and be right back. Let's very, very lightly stuff. Now that we're secure, let's stuff out the hand very, very lightly, just so that it has a little something in there so it doesn't feel so flat. We'll do the same thing on this one. Then we're going to stuff our sweater. So just right in there. And on up our sleeve, but not where we're going to sew because we don't want those big bulky shoulders. Alrighty. Kind of like this, just very gently so that it's still flat, narrow. We don't want it like this. We want them like this. And nothing up in the last top of maybe inch or inch and a half, like a little more than from your fingernail to past your knuckle here. So I'm going to do the same thing to this one, and we will need a draw string in the top of each of them. So you can do that before or after you stuff, your choice. All right, gently stuffed. The hands really gently stuffed. Plenty of room up here to sew it on without there being any stuffing up in here. We have our draw cord on here just to round it a little bit, but not a lot. So just about like this, just closing this up a little bit. Tie knot. Do the same thing to this one. And we're ready to position them on. And we're going to sew them on. I know you've probably sewn on a lot of arms. Okay, we're going to bring it up. And when sitting, the little hands rest right on the top of the knees. And that's what we're looking for, like this. And now we can work on making her look beautiful. The hair is just temporarily on the head because I wanted to get an idea of where to put the eyebrows. So I'm going to use a double brown yarn and make an eyebrow above each eye by coming in back here where into the hairline and then popping up, leaving enough yarn tails to tie off to when I get back over here, and then put an eyebrow on here. And it's just going to be an eyebrow that goes straight across and lines up with that eye, because I don't think I can make a curved one or an arch that would look perfect. There we go. So the first eyebrow, and I'm going to come in and do with separate thread. I'm going to go ahead and tie this off instead of going under. I don't want any chance that it's going to show through the white tubes. So I'll do the same thing over here and put a second eyebrow. I wanted to show you the temporary, I guess it's a pigtail that we're going to make so that this just looks like it has long hair. So the way I'm doing it, let me just set her back up right here for now, is taking a 3x5 index card. I actually have a couple of them here, so it's a little stiffer. And now we're going to put a knot in the top of it. And really try to get it as tight as possible. The fur yarn won't slip through like a silky yarn will. All right, I'm going to just even this up on the bottom even before I cut it because I had so many splices. And then slide it off of my cardstock and trim the bottom. All these loops. Alrighty. I'm going to go for one more knot and then position it. Throw this off a little bit. So just like I did this one, bringing it up here, matching it up. I'm going to tie some bows up here at the top and then secure the head. But I wanted to tie my pigtails on and then bring the hair cap down over where I tied them on. I put a bobby pin right at the back where the yarn tail comes out and at the back of the neck just to hold it in place. I have my cap coming right down to where the the pigtail starts. And I have one of my yarn tails threaded up. I'm coming into my fur. I'm going to thread the other yarn tail up, come in close, but a little bit different place. And just for now, I'm going to tie a knot right here. That's going to hold that nice and snug. I'll bury those yarn tails in just a minute. Come across, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Thread my brown up pull this down over where it joins and come up right in here and tie a knot. So I've tacked her hair down all the way around. I was just going in and out. When I got back here where the tail of the cast off for the fur was, I tied it to my 4-ply and then stuck my fur up in here, kept going around to the braid, knotted it off. So her hair is nice and secure. She has her beautiful braids. And she just needs to have a scarf and some bows and a mouth. I think we can make that happen next. Oh, and I tied her hands together because they were in the way, and I'll cut that off. And she still needs her pair of boots, sneakers, some kind of shoe. I wanted to show you how cute the pigtails look with some pink bows on them. It's really cute. And a way to control the head. So if your head wants to go forward too far, you can just come around to the back and shorten the back. Take a stitch up here, come down into your sweater, up a little higher. That's what I did with her. And you're actually shortening the neck area, and that keeps that head back. You can also tie a scarf on it, and that'll work every time. So with her, I wanted to narrow her shoulders down, and I have a longer needle here, doubled by double thread on it. I'm going to go through so it's doubled. I just feel like I want to narrow her shoulders down just a little bit. So I'm going to come in right here and right here on her shoulders. And try to come through on the other side at about the same place. You don't have to do this. It's just, I keep looking at it and pushing them in and thinking, yeah, I think I like it. So do I have enough to go? I think I do. I should have made this a little bit longer probably. Okay, so I'm just going to come down a couple stitches, come in on the other side. It helps to have a long needle. There it is. Okay, I'm going to cut this off my needle. Should have had that yarn about 4 or 5 inches longer. All right, let's see. Okay, I like that. I just like her shoulders being in a little bit. So I'm going to roll her over and tie it and bury the yarn tails. And call it a success. All right, that just narrows her shoulders down a little bit and makes her arms want to stay more on her lap. I'll probably do the same thing to my Ben doll. And you might notice that she has boots on now. That is going to be at end card at the very end of the tutorial, how you can make her cute little boots. They're kind of like this one. This is what I used in the tutorial. You can doll it up with fur around the top. They're just, I think they're really cute. So after I made them and then did the tutorial, if you'll remember, we never secured her leg tube in. They're just still loose. So I was able to pull her leg tube out, and that really helped with getting her boot on and getting it secured around the top, not to have a doll flopping around on the end of it. So now it's time. Go make your little doll boots, and then when you come back on, all you have to do is and I showed it in the tutorial for the little boot, but if you're worried that hot glue won't hold, this is a project that went completely wrong, and I wanted to save my yarn, and I can't get the glue to let go. So in order not to have stitches showing on her pant legs, I'm going to just roll it up and run a little bead of glue around. Bring it back down, and I'm going to go all the right way around her pant leg like that. So let's finish with a few options. So the way I softened her hairline, I took 3 long pieces of fur yarn, making sure that it was long enough to come from her part and go into her pigtail right here. And I picked her part a little bit off center. I did 3 on this side, 3 on this side, and used my needle, threaded up my needle, brought it up underneath her hair cap, made sure the ends were together like this, and then I tied a double knot up under her hairline. And I made them pretty close together, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then I just brought them down into her pigtails, tied them nice and secure with a big old knot, and then put a bow in them. Then for her nose on Ben and Velma, I just came in between the eyes and just went over, it looks like maybe 2.5 rows to give her a little button nose. Really long piece of yarn came in through the head, and then just over and over and over and over, going through the same holes. I picked 2 holes so that it could have a little bit of a, you know, squareness to it. A little tiny button mouth. These are just some optional glasses I got at Walmart. So cheap. They weren't even where the toys were. They were where, like when you're having a party and you want hats and kazoos and things like that. So I just picked them up. They had a little bow up here. I didn't like it, and I was able just to trim it off with my scissors, and then I filed it off. Her neck scarf is 90 rows on the 22 pin, and then I put these great big fluffy pom-poms on. They're 2.5 inches. Hobby Lobby, very inexpensive, $2.49, and there are 10 of them in here, so that's pretty cheap. If you don't want to go get those, use your pom-pom maker and just make some adorable pom-poms. So that pretty much is how I glammed her up. I think she looks cute. I took her to work. Everybody likes the glasses, so I think that I'm going to have to secure them back in here, make sure they're tied on so they'll stay on. And I think she's cute. So if you stay tuned, I'll show you a little clip of how to make her adorable boots. So I hope you'll like, subscribe, watch, and that you'll make Ben and Velma. God bless you.